In this lesson, we'll take a look at input dropdowns and how we can use them. We'll start off with this basic input and we'll build on it to end up with a fully functioning dropdown. So to start, we need to tell Opus that this input is a dropdown, and to do that we would add the open key, and the value of this would be the ID of the actual pop-up to show. So for this lesson we'll use the ID popup1, which is a built-in Opus component that renders a pop-up. Internally, pop-ups are just Opus grid components, which we can pass various props to control their styles and the data that each one renders. So if I give this a save, you'll see that we've got a new icon here ended on the right. And just to make it a little bit easier for us, I'm going to add a new key called autoDropdown, which when set to true means that we can click anywhere on the input to trigger the lookup. So to set records for this dropdown, we can make use of the lookupData scripts key or the lookupData object key, and those two specifically are for dynamic data. But in our case we're going to render static data, so we're going to need the lookupData key. So the value of this is an array of entries, and each entry can have various fields within them. So here's a list of entries. You'll see that we've got the age field and the record number within them. And just as a side note, because lookups are actually grid components, Opus will take every field within a record and map them to columns by default. So if I save this and refresh, when we click on the drop down we should now see two columns rendered, one for age and one for record number. So just also note that by default we can only see 10 records, and to amend this we can make use of a new key called lookupPrps. And the value of that is an object of props which gets spread directly into the grid itself. So grid has a prop called page size, and if I set this to 15 now, we should see that we're now rendering all of our records here. So to have more control over the columns that are shown, we can use the lookupWgts prop, which is essentially an array of column widgets. So in this case, if we only want to show the age field instead of both, we can add a new entry here, which basically specifies that at this index 0, the ID of this column is age. So this is what tells Opus, or this is how Opus knows how it can map a field to a given column ID. And as a result, we just have one column rendered there. To get back where we was, we can also add the other one in, record number. And if I refresh, we should see both. And we can also switch them around every one. So this is why the index matters. Now you can see they've been switched over. So if we wanted to give each column a header, we can add a new key to lookupPrps called hasHeader. We'll set that to true. By default it's false. And in order to give each column a name, we would say caption. For this one I'll call this age range. And there we go. So in this case, it's a bit difficult to differentiate between the actual headers and the cells. So to change that, I can also add some new props to lookupPrps, and specifically I'll add one called color header cell text, and I'll make this blue. And then we can see it's a bit easier to see. Can also add anything else I like, any standard grid prop we can add here, like color cell text hover, and we'll make this red. You can see that when we hover it's changing color. And that's all for now for actually rendering data and styling. In the next video we'll talk about how we can or what happens when we select a value and how we can flow the data from our lookup to various places that we need it.